So today we're going over E major scales, and watch this lesson for free and gain some tips on E major scales and some fingerings if you like. But you can also pick up the ebook, Major Scales for Classical Guitar. This is kind of for beginners to intermediate levels. And today we're going over the middle section of the book where we just cover some common open and closed position patterns and open string shifts. But the later part of the book covers all of your major scale patterns over the entire fingerboard, so that's really important too. So you might want to look at that first or after this. It can either way, you'll combine them in the end. Also, make sure you've watched my video on how to practice scales. That gives you tips on various right-hand fingerings that you should be practicing and other important tips and musical advice to help you improve your scales. Today we're just looking at the scales themselves and having a little bit of a conversation on it. So E major, we're going to go over an open position scale, two closed position scales, and then open string shift scale. Now, before we play, just remember you should always say the note names out loud. That will give you an awareness of the key signature on the guitar and also where the notes are on the guitar. Don't just memorize the fingerings and blindly play patterns. That won't really teach you that much. You want to know what notes you're playing. It's pretty straightforward. It's a mouthful sometimes when you have lots of sharps. So we have 4 sharps here: F sharp, C sharp, G sharp, and D sharp. So it's a mouthful: E, F sharp, G sharp, A, B, C sharp, D sharp, E. But it just goes slow and it'll really build an awareness of key signatures on the guitar and give you an awareness of what it all looks like on the instrument. So the first scale is open position, E major, 2 octaves. Always practice from one octave to the next octave, so you gain an awareness of where each octave occurs. So that's from one E to the next E. Because you want to know what notes you're playing, and of course saying them out loud will help with that. But just playing the individual octaves is really important too, so that you learn where your one octave scales are in multiple places. So from that E, and then from that E to the next E. So just making sure you know the individual octaves. So a 2-octave major scale, this one's a little bit in upper positions, but because it's static, I think even early intermediate students will be comfortable doing it. Beginners might want to skip it though. We've done this pattern a lot in other keys. It's a little bit awkward, but it's not too bad. So from one octave to the next, and then from that octave, just making sure that you know the octaves. And of course, say the note names out loud: E, F sharp, G sharp, A, B, C sharp, D sharp, E. So you gain an awareness of where the notes are up here. So another 2-octave major scale, starting on the 5th string this time. We've done this pattern a lot. Again, make sure you practice the octaves separately or with the shift. And then from that note, if you really want to know these 1-octave patterns, like this one is really great. If you're reading a piece of music and you're in that position, you can be like, oh yeah, it's E major. That's the general notes. That's where my fingers are going to be. So it's very important. An E major scale, 3 octaves, open and then closed position. This one's a little bit weird because we have an open string. I decided to do the 3-octave scale, but it involves combining an open position scale and a closed one. difficult to kind of comprehend. As you go over the book and review both the last section of the book and this section, you'll start to recognize the different shapes that occur, like that one, and then the open position scale. And then when you're combining them, they'll start to make a lot more sense. For now, just practice the scale and get to know it. But then after going over the entire book, just re-review it all over and over until it starts to make a lot of sense and you see the patterns all over. So a 3-octave example of an open string shift. Open string shifts occur in repertoire tons. They're the most useful shift because after playing an open string, B, C sharp, D sharp, E, F sharp, the open string can ring as you move your hand up to get the next note. Happens in repertoire all the time. Using an open string to shift is the most efficient way, and yet we rarely practice it in our scale practice, and it's rarely in scale books. So I think it's a really important thing to practice, and it's great for your shifts as well. So you play in an open position E major scale until you get to the open string, and then you're just moving up to that area of the guitar. And just remember, say the note names out loud, it'll make so much more sense, right? Because when you get up to here, B, C sharp, D sharp, E, F sharp, G sharp, A, B, C sharp, D sharp, E. You're just doing a normal scale from E to E with all the sharps, but and you just happen to be changing positions of the guitar. But if you don't say it out loud, then you're just going to memorize fingerings and it's pretty useless. So make sure you understand what you're doing on the instrument just by saying it out loud. It's such a simple thing.